I'm Jonathan Ho, and I'm currently presenting from LA in California. I chose my topic because I have a keen interest in human metabolism and particularly the function of satiety hormones. Um, and my project is on leptin's role in breast, endometrial, and ovarian cancer in obese female patients. I hope to integrate and summarize the current literature, establishing this relationship for the purpose of identifying and guiding areas of future research. So first, some definitions. What are leptin and what is obesity? Well, leptin, known as the obesity hormone, or more correctly as the starvation hormone, was discovered in 1994 by Dr. Jeffrey Friedman. It's a protein hormone mainly produced and released by adipocytes or fat cells. The primary role of leptin is to regulate energy balance and metabolism by inhibiting hunger. As a hormone, leptin exerts its effects by binding to leptin receptors, typically located on cell membranes, and then initiating a signal cascade. By definition, obesity is an abnormal and excessive accumulation of fat that presents a risk to one's health. This is defined in BMI metrics by a BMI over 30. The World Health Organization and greater scientific community considers obesity to be a global epidemic. The WHO also ranks obesity to be the fourth leading cause of death worldwide and in the United States, with 3,300,000 annual deaths respectively. Obese individuals have also been shown to have higher baseline levels of circulating leptin than normal weight individuals. So how do leptin and obesity present an issue? Well, let's consider a few things. As of 2018, the CDC ranked heart disease and cancer as the two leading causes of female deaths worldwide. It's important to note that obesity is one of the largest contributors to health disease-related deaths, and is also a huge risk factor, with studies citing obese individuals to have increased chances of developing heart disease from anywhere to 2 to 4 times more than normal weight healthy individuals. Additionally, women bear a larger burden of disease due to obesity, and that means that a woman's quality of life is more drastically affected. On top of that, obesity disproportionately affects more women than men worldwide. And since its discovery, leptin has continually been reported to be elevated in cancer patients of many different cancers. A recent meta-analysis from 2017 found this to be the case in breast, colon, esophageal, lung, ovarian, stomach, and thyroid cancers. Other studies have shown this to be the case for less common cancers, but this relationship is more established in these. There's also been a plethora of studies coming out in the past 5 to 10 years, demonstrating this relationship as well. Interestingly, obesity is also a risk factor for many of these same cancers, and it's generally accepted that obesity plays a role in exacerbating and contributing to cancer progression and development. And so with all these considerations, it can be hypothesized that obese female patients may be more likely to develop certain types of cancers, with leptin possibly mediating the oncogenesis and progression. So what's the big deal with leptin? Leptin levels and body fat are strongly correlated, meaning that individuals with higher body fat levels are likely to have higher leptin levels as well. Obesity status and leptin levels are also strongly correlated, which means that obese individuals will likely have higher leptin levels as compared to normal weight individuals. Of note is that leptin-mediated pathways have been established to be involved in the development of obesity. There's a lot of evidence showing increased leptin receptor activation and expression in adipocytes. There's also mounting evidence for leptin's role outside of energy homeostasis, including immune function and cell cycle regulation, both of which are implicated in cancer progression. And higher circulating leptin levels and expression of leptin receptors have been demonstrated in breast, endometrial, and ovarian cancers. On top of that, high leptin levels and expression of leptin receptor is a poor prognostic factor for cancer patients. So fortunately for breast cancer, there's been extensive preliminary research done on this topic. To establish the relationship between breast cancer and leptin, there are numerous studies showing elevated leptin levels and leptin receptors in breast cancer patients. In addition, leptin has also been shown to be a major component of the breast cell microenvironment. This just means that, your cancer cells or cells in general just are in their own environments with like different molecules floating around, right? And this just means that the breast cancer microenvironment specifically has a lot of components that lend to the development of cancer and progression. So how does leptin actually work in breast cancer? As mentioned before, leptin needs to bind to its receptor in order to exert any effects. So this binding of leptin causes the activation of the receptor, which then activates other molecules, then activating more molecules downstream in what is known as a signal cascade. So the diagram here shows the main signaling pathways that are implicated in breast cancer development. The main three signaling cascades that have been identified and are currently being studied are the Janus kinase 2 signal transducer activator 3 pathway, phosphatidyl inositol 3 protein kinase B pathway, and mitogen activated protein kinase extracellular regulated kinase 1-2 pathways. And these are what's known as the canonical leptin signaling pathways. And as someone had mentioned previously, that just means the original or like main or major pathways. And so the activation of these pathways by leptin eventually lead to transcription, gene regulation, and expression, which give rise to leptin signaling's effects. These pathways have been demonstrated to induce or regulate very oncogenic processes, including angiogenesis, cell proliferation, cell growth, cell cycle regulation, immune response, and more. Now, in terms of endometrial and ovarian cancers, though there's much more evidence pointing to leptin's role in the progression and development of these cancers than there is evidence showing no relationship between leptin and these cancers. The amount of evidence certainly seems to suggest that a relationship does exist, similarly to more prominently studied cancers. However, the amount of research is lacking. Many studies have shown that ovarian and endometrial cancer cell lines treated with leptin exhibit the same oncogenic properties and processes seen in other cancers. Interestingly, the same major signaling pathways that have been identified in breast cancer have been identified in endometrial and ovarian cancers as well. An extensive literature review found less than 5 papers detailing no relationship between leptin levels and endometrial or ovarian cancers. On the other hand, there were over 30 studies exhibiting a significant relationship. So in conclusion, regarding breast cancer, because these pathways and their effects are already being studied and have been identified, research into the details of these pathways and finding key biomolecules need to be further investigated in order to find possible targets for potential therapy. In terms of endometrial and ovarian cancers, more studies replicating the existence of a relationship between elevated levels of leptin and these gynecological cancers need to be done in order to convincingly establish this relationship. Furthermore, evidence for other participating pathways outside of major canonical pathways needs to be explored for a more comprehensive picture of leptin's role in overall oncogenesis. Thank you, and these are my references.
Great job, Jonathan. Thanks. All right, a few questions. In the Q&A, we've got one from Jen. She says, I had no idea obesity afflicted more women than men. Is there a genetic reason or is it a lifestyle choice?
Yeah, so I actually looked into this and talked about it in my paper, but so women, it's actually like there's so many factors, right? But lifestyle choices is definitely one of them. It's hypothesized that, women in general, and this depends on the culture, but women in general lead more sedentary lifestyles compared to men. Um, it's just by virtue of, culturally women staying at home more often than not. Um, and also males, they typically will be out and about more just to do their work, right? Um, Genetics, that's still actually being studied. It's not really definitive, but there does seem to be some role at play regarding genetics, though.
Great. And then another question is, what type of treatments do you think could help with this type of leptin induced signaling? And are there
Yeah.
treatments?
There's just like so much information I couldn't really get into, but so essentially like studying the mentioned pathways, right? Like there's molecules that communicate to each other in like a signal, like send a signal throughout your body, right? Um, so the goal is because this signaling of leptin elicits these sort of effects, the idea is that by identifying certain molecules to either like inhibit or express more within these pathways, that you can address some of those symptoms and for possible use like for therapy and like symptomatic relief. So yeah, ideally, I'm interested in doing more school. So I'd hope to actually build on this research and actually conduct experiments like maybe at like a cancer clinic or like a hospital, depending on obviously like where I go to school. But that's like kind of the main goal. I kind of want to study specifically more about breast cancer and how manipulation of specific biomolecules will affect these symptoms. So hopefully get a test done in like a lab or something.
Great. Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Thank you.